All right, so first things first, I'm going to put this up on YouTube. So since I'm going to do that, I put a disclaimer out. I'm not going to consider myself an absolute expert on all of these things. I'm putting this out because these are questions I was asked by somebody I know, and I couldn't find all of these answers basically in one place. So if you want to know a little bit more about how I personally look at some Montblancs and decide whether or not they're legit, or for that matter, what kind of features I look for in specific, or how I ended up with which ones I liked, I'll talk about those. But I'm not out here to replace SBRE Brown, or for that matter, Doodlebud, Goulet, any of the guys that are out there that are doing an amazing job. I'm not going to put a huge amount of production value into my stuff. I'm literally going to do a couple of quick videos so that I can answer questions for somebody that wanted to know very specific things about pens. And if it benefits somebody else, like some of my Strava stuff did, then great. Awesome. I'm not really trying to make money on these things, and I'm not going to be some go-to guy for making a million videos. That being said, I'm a Montblanc fan, but not a fanboy. I have other pens that I like to write with as much or more, and I just happen to have a lot of Montblancs right now. Anyway, for my personal hand, put that into perspective. So something that most people can know. How about a Rhodia A5? There you go. That's something most people have is an A5 notebook. That's my hand on an A5 notebook. That's a 146 on my hand. I don't think I've got a huge hand. It's probably one of the reasons why I don't love the really oversized pens, but I don't like the smaller ones I'm finding either. I don't hate them, but I don't seem to like a classic anywhere near as much as I do a 149. There they are right next to each other. I'll talk about the features between the two and basically keep going. So a 149, some of the big features, people talk about all kinds of different stuff. Let's see, I don't think I'm going to ever be able to get this thing to focus enough that you would ever see the serial numbers that are on here. Nope, not going to. And I don't think I can even bother to try and pretend like I'm going to ever be able to do that. Let's see if I hit zoom into 3. Oh, look at that. Actually, it does focus well enough. Look at that. So there's a 3, and you can see, so what am I seeing? Okay, so yeah, you'll see the Germany written on the band clamp right there. That's one of the things people look for, is whether or not you can see and how good the quality of the imprinting is. You can see what the serial numbers and things like that are on it. The serial numbers obviously way more difficult to see than the word Germany. Some pens, depending on how old they are and whatnot, you'll have things written underneath the clip underneath here, but this particular model, it is going to be a monotone nib, and it is, it's really nice. You can see the inscription on it. I prefer a two-tone. This particular model also has a solid ink window that let's see if I turn it this way, you can see through the solid ink window there, instead of one of the striated ink windows. I would prefer that, but when I got into this is what I found a deal on used. This is what I went with. Some other features that, you'll hear some people talk about is about the precious resin. If you take a flashlight, you can do this with a flashlight right from your phone itself, but you can see the red glow from this resin. That's one of the items that they talk about, what the quality of the resin is and things like that. That's things that make it stand out. If I go to one of the lower models, like go to a classic as an instance, instead of being a threaded cap, it's a snap cap. On these, you still have The resin that glows, red or translucent resin that allows you to see through. The quality of the snow cap is a big deal. You can go right back down to the same things I talked about before with those. This particular one is a roller ball. I've got a ballpoint also. I work with government paper a bunch, and the fountain pens don't play well with the government paper. As far as like the quality of the threads is one of the things that really stands out to me. The beveled threading, the 7 threads, the way that the refill goes in, it actually threads inside, and it is just this really buttery, smooth, gorgeous feel as that threads inside of the device itself, the holder, the barrel. Again, you're gonna see that same red resin. It looks black to the naked eye. You have to put some light behind it to get it to transluce like that. Some other features that people asked about are going to be really, when you feel the pen, that's something that really gives it away, but you're not going to be able to do that when you're looking at them, for instance, on maybe eBay or somebody's Facebook marketplace. Other items such as the quality of the etching, that you can see the word Montblanc and Meisterstück inside. There are little lines that are grooved inside of the letters that make up the words. That's very difficult without really high quality machinery to fake. So those are things that kind of give it away also if it was a fake. Again, that's going to be a classic. I'll just set that one down right here while I grab the other ballpoint, or no, sorry, the other roller ball that I've got right here. This is a Legrand size roller ball. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out so you can kind of get a better size idea. So inside of my hand, that's how big a Legrand is, sitting on top of an A5 inside of my hand. And I'll set that down right next to it. I'll grab the Classic so you can see that's how big the Classic is. You know, something that's really familiar with most people. Hang on, I'll grab some cheap pens. So if you're trying to compare to something that you might know, how about most people know a G2. So there's the size of a G2 inside of my hand. Here's the size of a Classic. Similar, very similar size pens. The cigar shape and the heft and the comfort of a Legrand is that much bigger. And of course the 146 is that Legrand size, so they're the same. I'll pull that out if that's something you wanted to see in comparison. Some other ones, like here's how big a Sharpie is next to it. Here's the Classic G2. Let's see, Sharpie. How about a Pilot? I've got a custom 912. So the custom 912, I went with the 912 in specific for the music nib, but there's a 912 size body. There is a Legrand, and we can go 146 right next to it. I don't own a 149 to do a size comparison, but there you can see size comparison on an A5. My hand, I could throw out, let's see, a Lamy Safari. You're gonna see Lamy Safari is gonna fall roughly in the Sharpie-ish size. So move everything down a little bit there. That's really giving you some size layout. Cheap giveaway click pens are even skinnier. So that's that. So let's see, ballpoints are probably the next thing up that I would talk about. On a ballpoint, you're going to have this unthreads from itself. It has the exact same resin that we talked about before. You can still see the red and the light transluting through there. See, like that. Probably not as easy to see with the overhead lights, but you can definitely see that red glowing through there. This is going to have a lot more metal inside of its body up top. So things that stick out to me when I look at these versus some cheaper pens is going to be, for instance, the beveling of the gears. The beveling of the gears is definitely something that's a higher quality machining. You cannot mistake that whatsoever. They're beveled on one side, straight cut on the other. You're going to see that there's going to be an unthreaded portion and a shelf right in there so that the pen itself, the barrel, bottoms out nice and secure and steady. The quality of the metal inside of here. When you turn this to deploy, they're a twist deployment. When you turn that to deploy, that's a very unique, comfortable feeling that all of the high quality ones feel that way. I've got some cross, that's not an over the top pen. That's what I usually carry in uniform. That deploys exceptionally nice. Something I didn't expect is on the ballpoints, it's not threaded. They are springy. So I've got young kids. You're gonna probably hear them squawk in the background at some point. I've got a bunch of different Montblanc ballpoints, roller balls, fountain pens. The one thing I will say is, for instance, this ballpoint right here. This was probably the second Montblanc that I purchased. You can see that, its inscription is not the same caliber as the 1 series pens, but at the same time, it feels just nice in the hand. The Oblessi, I don't know if that's the proper way to pronounce it or not, makes no difference. You correct me all you want. I'm doing this to help people, not to be the snootiest of all snooty knowing all. It's a twist deployment, and this has an ink in it. So this has a ink inside of it that was still a completely legit, but I think it's a bit older ink. I noticed that the hologram, for instance, the hologram was a little bit darker. I think it aged. It's not as sharp looking, but for sure, the ink itself, it doesn't write as nice, and I think it was a little bit old. I'm gonna order another one of the black in fine and another one in medium to try the two out and see whether or not it's just a Homer thing or not. And what I mean by a Homer thing or not, it's a crazy comment, is that I ordered a pen from somebody, and it came with a Homer blue, Homer the Greek blue. And when I got this, that was a game changer. It wrote so smooth, so nice, so ultimately slick that at that moment I was like, whoa, my desire to have only roller balls and get rid of my ballpoints came to a little bit of a screeching halt, because I really, really love this Homer blue. It looks nice. It's a little bit of a pale blue, so it's slightly different, but it wasn't about the look as much as it was how it feels. It almost feels as nice as the roller ball. It's not quite as nice, but it doesn't have any bleed through, and it doesn't care how cheap or garbagey of paper I write on. So the absolute junk, basically photocopier, printer, all-in-one printout paper that I get from an office that I've got to sign or fill a couple things out for somebody. This doesn't care. So I can still write. This is right here. This is a Legrand size. This is the, let me zoom back out again. So this is the Legrand size. This is the classic size. I can get that comfort that I liked out of a Legrand sized cigar shaped pen. And I've got the ability to twist deployment, very comfortable, really nice pen. I've got the ability to write on the garbagiest garbage paper out there. And this pen doesn't care. Same with this one. It's just that if I'm going to be writing longer, this is not nearly as comfortable. As weird as it is, it's in a really middle spot for me personally. I actually prefer this super skinny over the classic that's like a middle of the road skinny. So I either like the larger 146 or Legrand size, or the ultra skinny like a Century 2 from Cross, or the cheap click deployment jobbers. They're about that same size. That's what I used to write all of my notes on a, when I talk about cheap paper, by the way, my last job, I was required to have the government issued green notebooks. They were a requirement. Nowadays, I don't have to use this, and so I am going to transition over to a Rhodia once I get my own planner that holds a Rhodia notebook and a Rhodia A5 and 3 ink pens. Then I'll transition to this. But in the meantime, until that moment, I'm still using the government issued green planner for all of my notes. And on a daily basis, I use this. It was cheap. It's, I'm pretty sure it's a metal body here. I know a lot of it is metal, but I've actually meant to do this for some time and I never did. But let's do it today. I'm going to take a flashlight. I'm going to shine a flashlight in this. And I'm going to see, can I see through this body at all? No, I don't. No, not at all. No. No, this is a metal lacquered body. In any other model, I'd be a little worried that it was fake, not legit. But there's no way, there's no way that they're wasting their time doing a counterfeit version of this obscure model of Montblanc, which is definitely a model. And there's no way that they're going to spend the time to make such high quality internals, the deployment mechanism, the threading, the inscriptions, the serials, everything about this pen screams all of the normal security features or quality control of a Montblanc. It just is a much lower end pen. Well, the bonus for a person like me was, okay, if it's in my uniform and it gets damaged, it was very inexpensive in comparison to some of these, so I don't care as much. And if I take this and I put it inside of my planner here, this is quite literally on a daily basis, I'll take this, I'll slide it right inside of those hoops that a lot of these come with and zip it up. And if that zipper goes across that pen, I don't care. If it did that to my immaculately brand new rollerball, my skin would crawl a little bit. I don't even like having it sitting here personally. I constantly find myself putting stuff back onto the crushed velvet case that I usually carry them in, this thing right here. So predominantly, when I'm using them at work, I take them out of this, and when I'm done, I put them back in this. But that's just me. Those are a couple different sizes, some features. I will show you another one. Here's a 221 Montblanc Snowstar on each side. It's going to have a semi-hooded nib. Let's give you a little bit of zoom. So a little bit of zoom. It's got a semi-hooded nib. It's actually let's see, it is an oblique, like a double broad oblique. I'm a lefty. This thing feels horrible for me. And that's just for me. That's not going to be for almost any single right-handed person. As a matter of fact, my wife is a righty, and my wife was going to keep this for a while. She thought that was going to be her pen. And she really, really loved a Star Walker I ordered, and I like this Star Walker online, but in person, it just isn't me. I was actually going to consider it a catch and release and sell it, but my wife, she saw this and she was like, that is me. And I said, oh, are you sure? It is a roller ball. So some features about these, if you haven't ever seen one, I'll tell you things I don't like. I don't like the fact that to post, it's threaded. I hate that. And even worse than that is the feature that if you're one of those people that says, oh, okay, well, here's a prime example. So here's my Pelican. This is an unusual Pelican. You cannot post it. It won't stay. It just doesn't stay at all. So when I'm going to use it, I just simply start writing on my pad, and I always set the cap like that. It's a personal habit. It's what I do. You can't do that with a Star Walker because, of course, the clip comes down past the edge of the cap, so you have to set it down somewhere or physically hold it the whole time you're writing if you don't want to thread it on to your pen. If you're going to thread it onto your pen, this thing is an immaculate, it's brand new shape. It's gorgeous. If you're going to thread it onto your pen a bunch, these threads are going to eventually start to show some wear. There's no getting away from that. Let's see if I can adjust my phone just a little. There we go. There. That'll zoom a whole lot easier. So if you're going to go ahead and you're going to set this up so that you're going to, well, that's fun. It's zoomed, but now it's not focusing. There we go. So those threads right there, if you continuously thread on the cap over and over and over and over, they're going to eventually show wear. That's something I don't love, the concept of having a brand new pen that starts showing wear. So some features about this that were pretty awesome are going to be things like its serial number. You can see the serial number right there. No, it's actually, there it is right there. You get a good shot of that now. It's in a different direction. It looks very distinct in comparison. This was the first model I ever had where they wrote the word metal under the clip there. At first I was actually worried about that, but apparently there are multiple different models. This is considered the dark, and the dark has like gunmetal style fitment instead of like a bright chrome. And with that, the inscriptions look a little bit nicer to me personally. You can see how well the star is floating in the acrylic there. It's not like, wonky or hunky-dory. Perfectly centered, gorgeous sharp edges. I can do the same thing with a flashlight. It transluces. Same thing for the 221. It's a precious resin. You can see light transmitting through that. So there's actually something different. The 221, it's going to be a converter pen. So that's something that you don't see unless you get to like the 145s, 144s. And converters. Speaking of converters, so this is a little bit dirty. That's actually going to drive me bonkers, but we'll talk about this, Dave. Here is a music nib. So you can see the music nib has got the multiple tines. I'm going to show you the difference between the size of a 146 versus that Pilot. So you can see they're the two next to each other. That Pilot nib is still plenty big. It's really a very soft, supple, gorgeous nib. It has very distinct tines on it. You know, it's basically got 3 tines, 2 slits, 3 tines. It spreads out really nice to get line variation if you like that. That's not originally its design, but because it's a nice soft gold nib, it does give you a whole lot of supple line variation. Here's another one that's different. I think I talked about this to him the other day. This, you can see the plastic, the resin on this. The Pilots are blue instead of red like the Montblanc. Other pens that are different and to be talked about for 2 seconds. How about I know I mentioned this before. This is a secretary's pen, so it's a Waterman. It's petite when it's closed. Put that into perspective. I'll do the 146 and I'll do the Classic so that you can kind of see the difference between all 3. Classic's obviously the middle of the road shortness wise. There's a Pilot G2, a standard pen, so you can see. But some nice features about this is in the old days, the concept of this pen it was small so that it was kind of tucked out of the way. It had this hoop on here so that the secretaries literally would wear this on a necklace around their neck and they would just reach up and grab this. It was quick deployment. There's not a ton of threads, very quick deployment. And they would leave the cap on their necklace and then do whatever jotting and writing that they had to. This is the person or the collector, restorer that I bought this from, classified this as a wet noodle. And it has good line variation, but it's not something that it wasn't as good as what I expected. I'm not trying to say that the Pilot is the be-all, end-all of pens, but the line variation is better. I'll grab a sheet of paper. It makes more sense. So you'll have to forgive me. My writing is not great. I'm a lefty, and my job's to fly airplanes. My job is not to have great writing or have people be able to read my writing for that matter. So here's some of my writing with this pen. In specific here, this is Waterman Serenity Blue, but the Waterman 52.5 is the pen itself. You can see that's the level of line variation that I got out of it. It definitely is good. Personally, I thought that the Pelican 146 was better. You be the judge. You can actually see the two of them right there, right next to each other. Actually, I'm sorry, not 146, 140. I thought the Pelican was better, but the Waterman is much smoother. No question is it much, much smoother. American Blue is what I predominantly like, and that's out of the Pilot with the music nib. You can see the line variation out of that. It is a bit more substantial as far as when it gets skinny. It is nowhere near as fine skinny as these two, but when it gets thick, it is definitely thicker than those two are capable of. That being said, the size of the nib is a huge factor in that. I never reached for this pen, so it's going to go. I know it's got a new sack. It's a lever fill. It definitely has a little bit of what they call the rubber oxidation. If you look, you can definitely see the patterning in this pen. It is a pretty looking pen if you like these old school pens. and this is in okay shape, but not amazing. They talk about that right there. You can see the rubber oxidized, or whatever the material this is truly made out of. This grayish, greenish look. Apparently, this pen must have started out more of a black. And apparently, when you buy the premium, like absolutely A1 or A plus models of these, they don't have any discoloration like that at all. But I'll tell you, you'd be hard pressed to beat something else that's been around since like the 30s or something like that. There's no cracks or anything like that. So very, very happy with how this looks for its age. I just was not ecstatic with the line variation I got out of it. I just don't go grabbing for the pen much. I talked about the 140. Here's the 140. My wife uses this in her planner as a daily driver. It is nice. It is not amazing. So the not amazing part for me, she is using a red ink, so that is not tarnishing. That is just the reddish ink that she's using. It is like a micro point on the end. When they say extra fine, I challenged most of anything else I've owned to get down as fine as that. It is absolutely the finest of fine. You can write on the junkiest of paper with this, and it's not laying down enough ink to ever get to a point where it starts spiting or saturating, unless you try and get line variation. And then in junky paper, it starts to show. So if I wasn't doing line variation, it wouldn't be a big deal. Of course, it does have the pelican and the chick. It's got the old school pelican bill clip. There's definitely some tarnishing about that, but piston fill mechanism, 140, translucent body. As you can see there, you can see, literally you can hold it up to the sunlight and see how much ink is left in the body. I love this traditional color of pelican. I find myself, I think I'm going to end up in an M800 double rod, two-tone nib in this color scheme because I like it. So that's a couple of these ink pen things. I'll stop this video here. I'll do other videos about other very specific pens. Actually, I said I'll stop here, but here's some noodlers. If you're also looking for size comparisons between the classic in the middle there. I don't like that I just did that. The classic, the 146 to the far right, and then some noodlers, flex nibs, another brand that was popular in Germany. My wife's a German national. Online. I know you can get some online stuff in the US also. I've got a couple different onlines, like 5 or 6 of them actually. And of course, Safari, Lamy Safari. Okay, that should be plenty.